Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this wonderful session. We are on week 3 of 5, where we're celebrating women from different sectors, and we're quite excited today to have this session and be with you. Thank you, everybody who's joining us, and welcome to the show. Welcome to everybody on all social media platforms and networks, from LinkedIn to Facebook, wherever you're joining us. Thank you so much for taking time out to be part of this event. Our thing is just exploring journeys of different women in different industries who are coming to say this who we are, and we are setting ourselves as women, and we're saying we're writing our stories as women the way we know how, the best way we know how. My name is Tumelo Mahusi, and I'm the head of internal audit, risk and governance at Bahaka Group. Bahaka is a Tswana word for champion. We believe champion in big picture. And one of the reasons why we get to do this is because we really think impact should be made to the next generation of leaders. We want to make sure that they get a forefront in terms of what needs to be done. And that's why we get to journey with those women who get to tell us who they are and tell us what they've seen and what the world looks like in the public sector. And as always, I never walk alone. I am here with the phenomenal women across the board.
Thank you, Tumelo. Thank you for calling me phenomenal. Hi, everybody, and welcome to today's session. My name is Matlavanan Mohapi, and I'm the Managing Director of Bahaka. It's week 3 Women in Finance and Entrepreneurship webinar series run by Bahaka. And today we are so happy to be discussing the topic overcoming challenges, building resilience and confidence in public sector. Why is this topic important for us, and why we're having it today? 2 reasons, that comes to mind today. Simply because the public sector serves us, it serves us, and it is one of the biggest. It is the biggest employer in the currently. So most of us, when we start off our career, in public sector, or in fact, we find our way to the public sector. So it's important that we have a public sector or environment that is resilient and that serves us, the people. Now, how do we build resilience in the public sector, you might ask? So if you think of resilience is multidimensional phenomena, that cuts across policy sectors. As such, it requires a joint approach, to policy making that I can address complex interconnected challenges and balance trade-offs between economic, social, and environmental goals. We are excited today that we have phenomenal women coming to discuss this topic with us. Women that have spent some time within the public sector, and women who have found inspiration and believe in public service itself. We have 3. We're very fortunate. This is the first time ever on this webinar series that we have 3, because this topic is that important for all of us. We have Ms. Nombulelo Nyathela, who is a communication director. It is the one, who helps with reputation management and building confidence and communications within the public sector. And it's quite an interesting take that we're looking forward to hearing from her, seeing that every single day we are hearing the narratives that we are getting from the media about public sector and what it stands for is always on the negative side. And we will tell you at Bahaka that our experience with the public sector, as we have served the public sector as service providers, is that we have worked with some amazing teams and some amazing people within the public sectors. So we're quite excited as well that we have Anessa Safi. Anessa Safi has a very interesting take on it. She's a chief audit executive, and she has served as a consultant to the public sector. She has served within the public sector, and now she has a transitions to corporate. And we are hoping to hear from her how easy is it to transition, and what had inspired her to join the public sector as well. Third, we have Ms. Tsholofelo Molise. Tsholofelo also has an interesting take. She's a chief audit executive as well. Tsholofelo started out with the Auditor General. Interesting enough, so she was an auditor of the public, and she looked at this environment and still was inspired to then join it. Firstly, looking at helping the public sector prepare financial statements, and then now she's helping them in building the control systems and policies as an audit executive. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest today, Ms. Tsholofelo Modise, Anessa Safi, and Nombulelo Nyathela.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Wonderful to
Good
be here, and thank you,
afternoon.
the Haka
Thank
Group.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Anessa. Thank you for joining us today. Hi, Tsholofelo. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you for hosting us today. Interesting topic indeed. We're looking forward to learning from one another, and we want to see what's happening in the public sector from different spheres. So yeah, thank you so much for hosting us.
Thank you, ladies. So the program always starts with a formal introduction from yourself, and it's simply because we want to use your stories to inspire, to advise, and to teach. Welcome, Nombulelo, welcome.
Hi everyone, thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much. Um, Anessa, could you just do a formal introduction as to who is Anessa Safi?
Thank you, Nolo. So I come from humble beginnings, and I basically started off serving within the public sector as a finance management intern. I then found my way into the internal audit department, and I did a lot of internal audits for state-owned entities. And I think that's where my passion for giving back and my understanding in terms of what the public sector does in the greater economy and the greater country, the role that they play, was sparked. I then moved into telecoms based on my experience within a lot of work that we had done at Centec, and I'm now in financial services. I work as a head of audit in one of our group functions, really managing the audit coverage for the group functions within financial services. I work at Standard Bank at the moment and quite enjoying it, but still very passionate about giving back. And just, contributing toward a better country. Thank you.
Thank you, Anissa. Thank you so much for that introduction. Tsholofelo Modise, please, can you give us a formal introduction of whom Tsholofelo Modise is?
All right, thank you so much for hosting us and having us once again. I'm gonna give you a brief background on my educational journey. Firstly, I was born in Freiburg. I was raised in Freiburg, so I grew up in a small town called Freiburg in the northwest. So yes, my educational background, I studied my BCom in Northwest University. I also obtained my internal audit postgrad with UNISA. I qualified professional accountant, and I also obtained my qualification in municipal finance through VET. As far as my professional highlight is concerned, I started as a trainee at the Auditor General. I joined the private sectors, assisting them in the preparation of the financial statements. I joined the municipality as manager financial control, but I was still responsible for coordinating the audit between the client and the auditors. So that's my journey as far as auditing is concerned. And then I joined Salga. I joined Salga as an advisor in the Northern Cape. So currently, I'm the Chief Audit Executive at the Dr. Ruth Sokhomotse Mumpati, and that's about it, about my highlight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tulu. Thank you for telling us who you rep. You rep private, which is something that we have in common. Nombulelo, thank you and welcome. It's lovely to see you today. Please, can you do a formal introduction of who Nombulelo Nyathela is?
Thank you so much, Mahlonolo. I'm Nombulelo Nyathela. Currently, I work with the new baby in government called Infrastructure South Africa, which is 3 years old. We are a remnant of the former Infrastructure and Investment Office in the presidency. I studied law at Wits. I've gone on to study public policy, but given the space that I'm in, I'm currently pursuing my studies in infrastructure financing. Um, and I've worked in local government. I worked for the city of Ekurhuleni in the mayor's office. I've worked for provincial government as a spokesperson. I've worked for NGO as a spokesperson and currently a chief director where I am. I also had a very short stint in the Ministry of Electricity when he started. As my former boss, obviously, I helped him set up his office and his initial stakeholder engagements, his very public kind of engagement program, and as well as his international program in his first 4 months. But I'm back home now at ISA. So yeah, that's me.
I'm happy that you've brought that up. That the fact that you worked with the current minister of electricity, because he came on scene and he was just a bomb, right? And we all knew about him. We saw him grooving, we saw him dancing, but we also saw how present he was in trying to understand the issue that we have in the country of electricity, which was quite prevalent when he was just joining in. And I think, you have a unique role because you are in communication and you work with reputational management and brand management, which is quite difficult. As I was introducing the topic, I was reminded that every day, the media, in every like newspapers, you are guaranteed to find some negative narrative of the public sector. Different ministries all the time, of course, different departments, different provinces. But there's like, I promise you, you guarantee to find something negative about something within the public service. What does it take to be working with brand management and reputational management in such a space?
I think also because of where we are the custodians of the country's infrastructure pipeline, which has been underperforming for a very long time. There's been massive underspending in the space from government's part and delays in projects and so on. We are constantly bombarded. Actually, the reason I was a bit late for the webinar is because my boss wanted me in the office for an article this morning that says that we actually have no pipeline to speak of anyway in the country. Yes, we're constantly bombarded with that. And I think all it takes really is you cannot spin this work and you cannot lie to people. All it takes really is showing the efforts that you put in every day, but also showing some level of resilience in the space. And I think that's what we've learned. We've learned at Infrastructure South Africa that being fact-based is very important, that being grounded in terms of the work that we're doing. So we're constantly engaged. We live and breathe infrastructure. No one knows better than us. And so when there is an article, when there are negative news, we are quickly happy to engage editors, journalists, because we know exactly what's happening. We also are not afraid to ask for help in the beginning stages of Infrastructure South Africa or the Infrastructure and Investment Office. The bulk of our capacity came from private sector, people like you guys. That daily can assist with project preparation, that know how to structure projects, that know what should be the priorities and so on. So we're also not scared to ask for help. But I think you cannot lie to people. They know when there's no road in their community. They know when they don't have water. So all we can do really is really be diligent on the work and make sure that we implement. From a brand perspective, we've branded ourselves as at least knowledge experts in the space. We have not branded ourselves as saviors to South Africa's problems. And I think that's also very, very important, which is the difference between us and politicians.
Oh my word! Thank you for so much. That was amazing because you mentioned like three, I think, amazing things there. Number one, let's be honest about the work that we're doing, and focusing on what we are doing, right? And not be pulled into every story that's coming out there. And I like the fact that you talked about transparency, which came about. And of course, because now we're focusing on what we are doing, we can be accountable for what it is that we are doing. So I like those 3 points that you brought up, and hoping that we will get into them as well in today's session. Anessa, what I like about your career and your journey is the fact that because of this negative narrative with the public sector, I was advised very early on, actually, in my career as well, by a recruiter who said to me, don't go into public sector so early because no one will hire you after that. But you have managed to transition from starting in the public sector very early on as an intern, to servicing it as a consultant, to actually working in, and now you've managed to transition into corporate. Can you tell us a little bit about that movement?
Thank you, Nolo. So I think for me, I pick up on some of the points that Nombulelo had brought through. I think the important aspect is really to be able to be authentic, and really to be able to create connection, and have purpose as we are servicing. When I think about early in my career, I really didn't even have an idea in terms of where I wanted to end up, but I knew that auditing and finance was something that was interesting and exciting to me. Although some people would say, wow, number crunching, quite boring, but actually it was. And when I entered into the financial management intern program, it was quite interesting to see how established and what an impact the municipalities actually hold in terms of the local communities. When you look at the quantum of the billing, the quantum of the electricity monitoring, and the water billing, that was something that was very interesting to me. And as I better understood the workings behind the municipalities, I also realized that I want to be able to formalize, my role and my brand, and that kind of helped direct me into internal audit, and really working in a lot of the state-owned enterprises. I found myself auditing companies like Mango, companies like Centec, and I found myself doing a lot of audits within the local municipalities. But there came a time where I felt I needed some corporate and private sector experience, just because of the pace at which private sector moved, and also to be able to really get the better mechanics behind what makes private sector so successful. It was an interesting journey. I think being in consulting and really being able to throw yourself into different sectors, different environments, and doing the best that you can, allowed me to be able to make that transition. I think working with Centec and then moving into telecoms was something that helped. And I think the key thing is also really being given the opportunity. We must be grateful for the individuals who give us the opportunity. I know I interviewed and moved into financial services with not a lot of experience, but I've been able to thrive in that environment. I think it does talk to resilience, and it talks to some confidence. At the end of the day, building your competence and your credibility is important. And yeah, just being able to really have a purpose and not lose sight of where you want to move toward. A legacy for me is still, wanting to give back specifically to the country. So a key aspect that I still work on is a active member of the national mentorship movement, so that we can work on helping our youth, specifically unemployed or young entrepreneurs who want to move into sector, and maybe a little jaded to, as you've mentioned, some of the narrative that we see in the news, to be able to say, we must be optimistic. At the end of the day, we have a beautiful country, and there is so much potential, but it's got to start at grassroots level. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you, Anessa. You mentioned quite a number of important things there. Firstly, thank you for acknowledging that the public sector has rigorous control systems in place. And you said to make the transition, one thing, you remain authentic and true to yourself, not forgetting having a purpose on set and constantly working on that. And we also mentioned something about, and this is the second time that you've mentioned it, about giving back. And Tulu, I know you started starting within within audit, right? From Auditor General. And I mean, every year we receive this MFMA report from the Auditor General, PVMA reports from the Auditor General, and it's always no improvement, or there's improvement. So when you are in the Auditor General and you are having a view of this public sector, what then inspires you to then go to the other side and join and sort of throw yourself in and get your hands dirty on the other side of the wall? What inspired you to move, Solo?
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes.
Very audible. Okay.
I was looking forward to a response to that question. Apologies, everybody. As you know, we are connecting from different places within the countries, and some places have better connectivity than others. So apologies about that, but we will catch Solo as the session goes on.
Awesome. Ladies, something very important, I think, as we looking into public sector, it's, with King 4, there's a lot of principles that come through in terms of how we actually build good corporate governance. And transparency is key. And maybe let's speak to that. Let's speak to, from a public sector point of view, how do we improve our system to ensure that we actually are transparent and looking at all levels of government, of course, so all the theaters. How do we make sure that we actually get to a point where we create transparent systems? Maybe Nombulelo can start with us on that.
Okay.
Tulu's back. I don't know if I should continue or
Yes,
Tulu's going to jump in. Here we go.
thank you so much, colleagues. Apologies for that. The network is a bit unstable because I'm connecting from my cell phone. The laptop was giving me a problem. Yes, I was saying, when you are an external stakeholder, when you are with the Auditor General, auditing is easy because you follow processes. You have procedures that you follow when you audit. It seems easy when you are on the outside. So joining the public sector was easy for me because I thought when I join, things are gonna be easy, because when you audit, you ask yourself, what is it that these people are failing to do? What is it that they are failing to implement? Why is it that they are failing to implement? Because we have laws and regulations are very clear, procedures are very clear on what should be done and how it should be done. We are guided by processes, we are guided by procedures. And then you join the public sector, you join now, you are now an auditor, you are not an auditor anymore. You realize that things are not as easy as they looked when you were on the other side, because now the outcome is dependent on what other people, on other people's performances. The outcome is aligned with various stakeholders' performances. So you get inspired when you are on the other side, but training, you realize, okay, now this is totally different. It's totally different but because now we have your processes in place, you have controls in place, you have we just need to have management team that is supportive to the accounting officer, the administrative head of them. I'm talking to the municipality because I'm in the municipal space at the moment. So when I keep on I would keep on referring to political administrative head as the municipal manager. So yeah, I was inspired because I thought it was easy, but it does not mean it's not doable. It just needs commitment and firmness and assertiveness. Yeah.
Awesome. I really do like that. Thank you so much for bringing that in. Because I personally have never been on the other side. So for me, it's always like, oh, why are people not getting it right? It's so clear. So I'm on the other side, and I'll forever be on this side because it's so nice to actually point fingers. I never wanted to be pointed fingers at, so that's great. I'm seeing a couple of questions coming. Please do feel free wherever you're joining in to actually pose a question. We'll address them throughout the like at some point within the interview. So thank you so much. Keep on popping those questions. All right, I think we just to carry on from where we're at, Nombulelo, maybe let's take it then. So how do we ensure that we create transparent systems within the public sector in all spheres of government?
So I think that the public sector by nature is meant to be transparent. It's the idea of a public sector. Really, nothing is meant to be a secret. Very few things are secret in government. I mean, maybe yes, cabinet, some cabinet documents, but for the bulk of it, what departments do, all of that stuff is public. How departments spend, what are the programs, all that is meant to be public. I think that maybe the disjuncture can be in how that information is communicated, whereas there's a repository somewhere. I think it's not always accessible or not always communicated effectively or efficiently. And I think we're constantly in that aid. I do think that different administrations have done it differently. And I think that this administration has been particularly cognizant and more aggressive in terms of communicating what government does. You know, from the level of coordination, we have a government communication, the GCIS, which kind of
Yes.
coordinates government communications. And I think they've been very aggressive in terms of communicating some of government's programs at all levels, whether it's to high level stakeholders, to community members. I think as of course there will always be more that should be done and can be done. But I think there's efforts there. From an infrastructure perspective, we have a number of publications we put out where we try and communicate, for example, the progress of the pipeline. Also, you can just request that information. Like I'll just email it to you. Like, you know, we don't hide. Yeah, it's not a secret. Like how far is the project? Oh no, 60% under construction, that type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I think that to say that government has to be transparent. It's not some secret society. We have to share information, and people need to know what's happening in government, and that's where the transparency comes in. I'm going to delve into this question that the advocate just asked around political interference, because you know, like we report, we have multiple kind of reporting executive authorities. Ultimately, the infrastructure program reports directly to the president. So the president has a direct interest in terms of how the infrastructure program is implemented and, you know, its progress thereof. We also have a minister, and then we have other ministers that have interest in our project pipeline, because, you know, it can be water, it can be human settlements, and so on. And often we get called in to account to different ministers on different things, or to help with different things that are infrastructure related. And I must say, you know, for the most part, it has been really helpful and impressive to have ministers that want to see Infrastructure South Africa help their projects move along. But I also am cognizant we're not a project sponsor, so we don't procure. So no one is going to call and say, "Hey," like, yeah, yeah, and I think and I must say, for the most part, because we also responsible for planning, we've not had any political authorities kind of step out of line and say, no, you can't build a road here, rather come and build a park or something weird like that. I think everyone kind of gets the urgency of the infrastructure program and focusing on these network industries and so on. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think one thing that you bring that's quite, and I think it speaks as well to the accountability system in terms of how we just get things right. And key to it, I've just been exposed to the new public procurement bill. And one of the key things that you're saying in there was that the reality is transparency. One of the key ways of actually avoiding corruption or making or limiting the amount of corruption there is to actually make everything transparent. And I know that public sector is supposed to be that transparent, but you may find that the experience the ground might not be that everything is as transparent as it looks. Maybe Anessa can come in on that and say, how do we better do it? What do we do to ensure that we continue being transparent and be accountable to the citizens of the country and to everybody, to all stakeholders?
Thanks, Tsholofelo. I mean, if we delve into that, I think for me, when we had spoken about corporate governance and really the transparency, I truly believe that government has been working to set up the control systems. If we look at exactly as you've mentioned, we've had the Public Finance Act, but the Municipal Finance Act. We've got your public committees on going to speak to Parliament around your finance results. We're also seeing, as you mentioned, the procurement bill. I think for me, at the end of the day, the intent is there. Our controls and basically the acts that we've brought through the application of our governance frameworks is really world class. But I do believe that a control system is only as strong as the people behind it. And ultimately, what we need to be able to do is really create a level of independence and very strong monitoring. I think that monitoring, and that's where, at the end of the day, our internal control teams, our audit teams play such an important role. And even our people that are using the whistleblowing lines, people who have ability to be able to create the transparency. We've got to pay attention to that. We've got to maintain that. And I think the key thing then is really the consequent management. When we look at the municipalities, year on year, we've got the Auditor General bringing through reports on which municipalities have a clean audit report versus those that do not. And, we need to be able to work on how do we get to that level. And for me, it's building that strong control environment, making sure that we have the right individuals who are passionate about ensuring success. And then basically the monitoring must translate into some sort of consequence. I think that's where we need a stronger contribution from public sector. And I think that will create confidence and more trust in the system.
Thank you so much. So maybe just your take as well, just on transparency at a local government level. What are you seeing? What do we do better to ensure that we have proper accountability systems, as well as ensuring that transparency is promoted across board? You are muted there, Tsholofelo.
Hi, Tsholofelo, you're muted.
You are muted. Thank you.
We are not receiving sound from Tsholofelo. Apologies. I think again we have network issues from Tsholofelo. It's quite an interesting question to think, especially because there's different levels within the public sector, and it's nice to just hear what's happening at the local government level, where really the service impacts the people on the ground. Tsholofelo?
Awesome. Just maybe, and I think maybe Anessa, you may come in as well, because one thing that we've been mentioning is all the ads, your PFMAs and MFMAs, right? And I think I enjoy the fact that you actually are within the corporate space now, and it's always made to believe that actually things are better on the other side, like from a controls point of view. What is your take? What is your take, having been exposed to both the public and private sector? What are you seeing? I think it's better. And I know from just the laws and regulations point of view, the MFMA and PFMA are quite great legislations. But what is your opinion and view on that?
Thanks, Tsholofelo. And I think I'll take that back to my previous point. I think ultimately, at the day, whether you are in public sector or private sector, from a laws and regulations, we are world class. We have created the systems, the laws and the regulations for which we need to abide by to maintain excellent internal control. I think the key difference I see is within the private sector, the pace at which we remediate and the pace at which we consider the consequence of failure in control is much faster. I mean, at the end of the day, I think just as much as, we say public sector is managing public funds, when you're in a private company, at the end of the day, if you are listed, you still have shareholder interest that you need to maintain. At the end of the day, I think oversight and the monitoring becomes a bit stronger when you look at JSC requirements, when you look at your meetings with the boards. I think the consequence management becomes more affirmative, and it becomes more prevalent. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if a CEO is not doing what they should be doing, or if somebody has not done what they were supposed to from a control perspective, immediately a investigation is underway, or there is some sort of consequence management that takes place. And I think that is the key difference. The accountability is much stronger. I don't that at the end of the day, an internal control system in one area could be designed more appropriately in another. Ultimately, it really is driven by your people, your process, and your system, and then how strong that internal control system is. So I'm not going to be able to put out an opinion to say I believe the one is better than the other, but I do definitely believe that from a consequence and an impact of a failure, turnaround time is much faster in private. I think, and that's something that we can learn in the public sector. They always say things move slow. They ask you, is this a government organization? And we want to change that narrative. Nombulelo, I think from your perspective, even just in infrastructure and project management, when we need a road to be done, ultimately at the end of the day, I think the urgency with which we need to get those projects out is so important. So yeah, it's the pace at which things happen, I think, that create the narrative that, we really want to shift.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Tulu, I see you back on. Maybe let's just carry on at a local government level. How are you seeing us improving just our accountability system as well as the transparency across board from a local level?
Oh, okay. Thank you so much, and my apologies again, colleagues. I don't know what's wrong with this connection of mine. In terms of accountability, we have what we call the PMS system, and it's the nice part about this is that it's a unit on its own. That means it works mainly with the performance of an institution and performance of individuals. So we normally have our quarterly performance reviews where we see where we evaluate or assess where we are, and if there's anything lagging behind, we see which measures we should put in place to ensure that we achieve our objective. That's accountability, and there's consequence management. That one is mainly the responsibility of your supervisor to implement if you are not adhering to laws and regulations in terms of your local government policies and laws and regulations. So performance reviews, it assists the municipality. I did mention that I will refer to municipality because I'm in the municipal space. It does assist because now we can see where the gap is. If there's anything that we want to achieve, our core objective is service delivery. So we need to ensure that people have access to resources. They give them. They have access to basic needs. So basic service delivery is our core objective. So in our institution, infrastructure department is we call it the service delivery unit because they deal with water, your sanitation, and all other service delivery issues. So we take performance review very serious. The political leadership, they are part of performance reviews, and consequence management is implemented. No, it's not at the level where we want it. It's implemented. So we are gradually implementing consequence management, and I believe we will get where we want to be. And in terms of transparency, the municipal documents are they are they are public. They are public documents. Your budget is you go on the website, you're gonna get our budget. You go to the website, you're gonna get our audit report. So there's transparency. The vacancies that are in the municipality, you will know how many vacancies are there and the processes to apply for vacancies. So there is transparency, there's public participation, where the community is taken through what the municipality will be doing in the next year, in our operational plan, or in the next 5 years as per our strategic plan. So there is transparency. And I think we should continue with awareness, because most of the time when we get to, especially in small or in villages, in small towns or villages, we get a low number of participants. So I think we should try to work on improving, on making awareness to, so that information can reach people equally. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And I'm glad, Tolu, you're bringing up the issue of just awareness, right? And it's quite prevalent that as transparent as we are, and I think Nombulelo also brought it up, as transparent as we are, as accessible we think these documents are, sometimes is the awareness of where to locate them, and of course participation. Now, policy is quite important, is the benchmark of everything that we do within the public sector. In fact, I think when we talk to, the other thing that keeps coming up is the pace that we move within the public sector. And I think the reason why we move sometimes at such slower pace is because we all have all these policies and processes that needs to be followed, and need to be adhered to at times. And sometimes they, I mean, in private sector, for example, you just get a budget approved and then you move, you move. But we have all these processes and things in place that we need to get out of the way before we can move within the public sector. Now, how do we build inclusive policies and encourage public participations in building policies and ensure that, of course, it's Women's Month, that the women agenda is prioritized as well? Nombulelo, I think let's start with you again. How do we build inclusive policies and increase participations from the general public as well?
I think just to maybe jump on the point that Tulu was making, I think local government does participation incredibly well. It is legislated and it is a requirement that people are part of the planning and budgeting process. And I think it's been incredibly helpful to get people's buy-in. So I think, again, just making sure more people are aware of that process. From a provincial and national government level, I think that, yeah, there are some disjunctures there. We often, I mean, the president has been on a 2-year roadshow now, in community in Bezos, trying to really get a sense in terms of what people want government to do. And I think, those kind of public gatherings are helpful, and they go on for very long, and everyone who wants to speak gets to speak. Hey, yeah, the whole day, like we just sit there and take notes and we hear what people. And I think those kind of platforms can be important. Can we do better? Certainly. In terms of specifically on the gendered question, I think we have empowering legislation from the gender machinery in government. There's a policy on women empowerment. There's policies on gender responsive budgeting, and many others that allow for us to have to take women into consideration. One of the things when we started putting together the infrastructure pipeline was that the Department on Women said, okay, we hear you guys speaking very nice about big catalytic projects, but how do women benefit? Both from the perspective of them as, you know, being able to bid for such projects, but also how to make sure that these projects are kind of responsive to women in their communities. And you know what the PFMA says, we can't just say, take the women. So this is one of the ways that policies can be hindrances. Yeah, we can't. We go to an open, the project sponsor would go to an open bidding process, and anyone who fairly wins the bid gets the project. And people often say that no, we don't prioritize women, we don't prioritize youth. Our set-asides are not adhered to very strictly. Also very true, but I mean, this is just one of those things where we really struggle. Like the political will, and the willingness to want to do the right thing doesn't necessarily coincide with the policies that are in place right now. So yeah, and I think it's always going to be work in process. I think there's ways in which we can creatively think about doing things without necessarily denigrating or compromising the integrity of the state, and its process when doing things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I can maybe just ladies, if I could just add on, I think an important element that Nombulelo has brought through is, we've got these policies, we've got these processes, there is empowering legislation, but at grassroots level, we've got to be able to enable. I think for us, it's got to be, how do we create that pipeline so that ladies, or let's say female-led teams are able to stand at the same height to be able to come through and bring through a evaluation request for any of the projects that come through. How do we enable our women? And I think it comes to us, people who have the ability to be able to make the difference, to say, we need to be able to drive and have that women in leadership at the forefront of all of our agendas. I think that's the important aspect as well. Thank you.
Also, I think just to add on that, I think public sectors, currently we do have policies, right? I think it's just a matter of promoting this policies. It's just a matter of promoting these policies, so that we encourage diversity, we encourage inclusion of women, of women in all aspects, as far as public sector is concerned. I think that will help in terms of promoting your gender equality, to ensure that we strike the balance between we strike the gender balance in leadership, especially in leadership positions, so that the structure is just not bloated with men. And we also should have targets. We also should have targets. Maybe HR, where they are planning, they should have that in their targets, or how many women should we employ, and internal audit, the Auditor General, as well as other key stakeholders that monitor compliance in municipalities. I think they should take that into consideration. They should audit that. It should form part of their oversight procedures, so that this is implemented in municipalities. And when the advert goes out, it should always have a clause where they say women are encouraged to apply. Thank you.
Thank you, Sulu. Thank you for that. Sure. So many nuggets coming out, and we're talking about policy and inclusivity. And I'm reminded that I've been seeing a lot lately. I think they normally called Imbizo. And I think Nombulelo was quite right that I think it's easier for local government to reach out to the community and be more inclusive and make a call out. And we all join at our local halls to come and speak, because I've seen literally, like, I think it's in the education bill that was coming out. And students, teachers, everybody within the community was welcome to just stand in front and speak and tell everybody involved as to what they think of the bill. I guess a follow-up question to that is that from those in Bizo and from those communities, it's always like a wonder, I guess, when the final bill comes in or the final policy come in, to whether our thoughts or our contributions were taken into account in the building of the process. So how do we do that? How do we send back the message then, I guess, to say that this is what the community wanted? And Nombulelo, I guess to your point as well, in the presidency's current efforts, how does he go back to the community to say that I've heard you, this is what you asked me to do, and this is the plan going forward?
So with the national imbizos, the president will always delegate. Let's say in an area the big issue was crime, or in some other zamas or anything like that, the president will delegate 2 or 3 ministers that must be responsible for resolving, and they must come and account. So that is often how it's done, but also they work in collaboration with provincial and local governments. So there definitely is a feedback and a looping in. In terms of whether the input made in public participation processes where policies are meant to be enacted, or legislation is meant to be enacted, I think there definitely is a consideration of what people are saying, because if you don't, it's going to go to court, regardless. But I also we also know that government has a responsibility to consider not just public participation, but all other legislative frameworks of the country, the constitution, other acts of the law, and so on. So in a situation where the community says, bring back the death penalty, in an overwhelming majority, government will not go and enact that kind of legislation, because it's just not in line with our ethos, the constitution, and so on. So I think it's a very delicate balance. But we know, for example, in instances where government has pushed through, for example, on demarcation, as a very good example, on demarcation kind of um, battles, and we found communities really push back when they don't want to be demarcated into another province or another municipality, and so on. So it's not a perfect relationship, definitely at times contradictory, but government has a responsibility to balance things out whilst listening to communities and what they think.
Mm. That's comforting to hear, that there is a balance, and we always go back to our founding document, which is the Constitution, to make sure that every right is protected, that I can't just go and ask for something and then it is done. Maybe something that is just biased and is just suited for me. So look, there was a question that we received in the comments around political interference, and I'd like to just get your take on this one. As to especially from a from a local government point of view, how do we deal with any level of political interference in the work that we do, in the projects that we've set out to do? How do we manage that relationship?
Okay, thank you. I think with this, our starting point should be understanding the difference between political interference and political intervention, right? Because we often confuse the two. So if we are at a level of understanding what the other one means, we will be comfortable. To my understanding, political interference is when political leadership interfere in administrative issues, right? And then intervention is when they see that administration are not implementing strategies as outlined as outlined in our institutional strategy. So these are two different things. So in terms of interference, we the policies are very clear. We the policies are clear. We just need to have the administrative head that is very assertive, that is very firm in terms of guiding politicians as to how and where and when they should step in. As much as they are our our employers, yes, political leadership are employers. Council is an employer of administration, but we need to know to draw the line. So there are many ways to report when there is political interference. COCTA, the MEC of COCTA is very clear about what should be done and what it should be done. We are also guided by the Municipal Systems Act in terms of the roles of councillors and the role of executive mayors and mayors. So when we see that there is political interference, we report to our oversight structure. We have the audit committee, and in terms of internal controls, it is the key oversight structure in the municipality. You have your municipal public account committee, of which is the committee of council. So we take the matter to such structures, and this is taken to the MECs and other political heads. So they know that there is a line, that we draw the line. We do draw the line, and we are very vocal about it. We are very strict about it, and we do report as and when we see that there is political interference. And yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. You really went very broad and you were comprehensive. But also thank you just for bringing up the point that there are structures in place to report in cases where there is political interference. And thank you also for the distinction between political interference and political intervention. And I hope that answers your question, Advocate Nombulelo Madikane. Anessa, the current state, and I think you talked about it a little bit when I guess we're trying to do sort of a comparison between the private and public. But looking at the state now, what would be, and I think you did bring it up a little bit, but what would be the desired state, from a public policy point of view, from government structures? Are we at the optimal? Like, does government, the way it look like now, is it at the optimal stage that we desire, or if not, what can we change?
Thanks, Nalo. That's a tricky one. I think at the end of the day, I mean, just where we are from a country perspective, I think if we look at our civil narrative, a lot of people would say, oh my gosh, we are actually almost at a failed state. We look at our electricity, we look at our water, we look at our infrastructure, and it does become a little demotivating. And I think that's where the resilience needs to come in. And I think at the end of the day, from a government perspective, where we need to be able to rebuild the confidence and the trust that your constituents need to have with you. I think for me, the key thing is when we look at private sector, ultimately at the end of the day, for an individual to be able to go out and buy a share on the JSE, they have trust that the company is going to be able to bring value to them. And we need to be able to really present that same view from a public sector perspective, to be able to allow us as the constituents of the specific municipalities, specific government organizations, to be able to say that, you know what, we believe and we absolutely trust in what this organization or this level of government is trying to get to do for us. We believe that there's confidence in how they are going to be managing our projects, managing, the resilience in building infrastructure, the strategy in terms of the long term and the short term. And I think that's the key thing. We need to be able to go back to build the trust and build the confidence. We know that there's a lot of hard work happening behind the scenes, and there's a lot of people that are working very furiously to be able to get us to a better state. But until we create that transparency, until we're able to change the narrative, it becomes very difficult to be able to say we are operating optimally. And so I think we need to be able to really, really look at what are the levers we can pull to really bring back the trust. I think that also will bring back private sector investment. It will bring back, at the end of the day, even just us as individuals wanting to be able to participate in our local municipal elections, our local government elections. We know that at this point in time, we are jaded as a people, and we need to be able to see how we can rebuild confidence and trust. Thanks.
Thank you, Anessa, for that wholesome answer. And I think this takes me right to you, Nombulelo, because you work with reputation management, brand management, communication. How do we restore the trust? And I think when Anessa also was speaking, she opened with that the state we are in now, we're currently in a failed state. If you look at, and she specifically mentioned infrastructure. I'd like to get your views on where you think infrastructure agenda is right now, the state. But I'd also like you to just talk to a little bit as to how can we restore the trust and confidence in our public service.
So a few things. I think we need to build a meritocratic state, and that is a state where everyone who is in it is really the best among us. And I think that's something that we've been asleep on for quite some time. And there are pockets of excellence. There really are pockets of excellence in the state. Some people working very hard, but sometimes not so much. And I think we need to show people that we don't recruit for the sake of it. We take the best minds in the country and we put them in the state because they have to deliver to the majority of the people. So that meritocratic state becomes a very, very important thing. And of course, being transparent, open to the public. And, you know, this is, yeah, people need to know that they can have faith in their democratic instruments, that if you have a burst pipe and you call the municipality, they will respond and they will do something about it. So I think that's just that transparency in terms of processes, that openness, that attending to people is very important. And then I also think that, you know, part of the things about, you know, being in the making sure that people in the state work very hard is also the other part where you must stop treating public servants like criminals all the time and like the worst people you can find, you know. One of the things I used to complain about when I was in local government was the fact that, I mean, the public servants, these people that must serve the majority of the community, were in dismal offices. Sanitation was poor, no lighting in the office. I mean, just treated like the worst. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't happen in the private sector or anywhere else. So I think if you want a responsive state, you must treat your work personnel like the professionals that they ought to be, the professionals that they are. And I think the last thing Anessa spoke about earlier on is the pace of delivery is very important. Of course, in the infrastructure space, there's a lot of lethargy. Things are not moving as quickly as they should. The fiscal headspace is running out. You know, we don't have, we don't have much. The fiscals can't give much. We're struggling to, we do, I mean, look, the investments from the private sector in infrastructure projects far outweigh those of the public sector, by the way. But, you know, like if we did more, we'd get more from the private sector. So I think, you know, just being able to implement at pace is very important. We gazetted our pipeline in 2020. And yeah, I don't think we are at the 50% mark of construction. So that just tells you that we can definitely just do more heavy lifting in terms of implementing infrastructure delivery. Yeah.
That's an important point that you bring in forth there. Private sector investment in the public. So looking at something along the lines of public-private partnership. That's interesting. Solo, so you currently now in a district municipality, you have three other local municipalities that you're looking after. Can we talk to the state that we're in now from a local government level? And is it the desired state, or how can we improve things?
In terms of audit outcomes, we are not where we should be. We are definitely not where we should be. We don't have one municipality in the district with a clean audit. We have five locals and one district. We don't have a municipality that can confidently say our financial affairs are in order. That's a fact. We are not in terms of the audit outcomes. We are not where we want to be. We have high escalating rate of unauthorized, irregular, and fruitless and wasteful expenditure that is growing year in, year out. And these unwanted expenditures, we only incur them because we don't follow processes.
Yeah.
So right now where we're sitting, I'm not sure of the figures, but what I know is that year in, year out, we are our number is going high, is going up. Now the local government department, COGTA, has in collaboration with local municipalities and the district, they have hired MPEG researchers, and we also have MPEG researchers in the office. But the MPEG researchers, they assist MPEG with the investigation and of UIF expenditure, as well as trying to assist them to reduce, to come up with a reduction strategy or to implement the reduction strategy. The problem is when you don't get support, because when my work is dependent on who does what, it's very difficult for me to achieve what I want to achieve. So in terms of that, we are not where we want to be. So, and I think and I believe it's gonna assist where when political leadership become more hands-on and more hands-on on this, and when my KPIs or my annual plan is linked to what Tumelo is doing, we will be in a position to say, okay, because my plan is linked to Sulu's plan. There is no way I cannot do my work because mine is linked to hers and hers is also linked to mine. And in terms of policies, honestly, the current state, I'm going to give an example and talk to the internal audit policies and governance documents. These documents, they govern our unit, internal audit, the policies and governance structures. I meant to say governance documents. The unit itself is responsible for evaluating and strengthening internal controls, right? So when we have effective controls, and policies are implemented, we can confidently say there's resilience. We can say there's accountability, and so we are not where we want to be, because sometimes what I outline in my plan. I'm going to give an example, the audit committee charter. The audit committee charter, we outline on the audit committee charter in terms of the MFMA that they need to meet 4 times in a year. But you'd find that when we give them dates to say we are meeting on this date, management has other commitments, and the audit committee is unable to perform their duties. They are unable to perform their oversight role, because their role, or rather their role is interlinked to, it's dependent to management. So I think what should happen is that the targets or the operational plans and the strategic plan of different units should be linked to policies for all departments, not only policies for infrastructure. Internal audit policies also should be incorporated, so that we see how we should how we can achieve the desired outcomes. But in terms of the financial state and the audit outcome, we are not where we want to. We need to reduce on our spending. We need to implement the cost containment policy as much as we can, and I think that will take us to a state where we want to be.
Thank you, Tsulu.
Oh my, so much passion. I always enjoy it when I see so much passion coming through, because that's really what we need. Now, I think one thing, we want to be futuristic about it, right? And let's look at the future. Let's say what's happening, what's coming in the next 5 to 10 years, but mainly as well, let's say, how do we position ourselves as women to actually take advantage of whatever is coming before we move to Australia? How do we stay in the country and make sure that we actually take advantage of what is in here within the country? And so what's coming? What's next? Maybe take us through it. Nombulelo, you can go first.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think the next 5 to 10 years will be politically different because of we see the electoral patterns. So I think it presents both an opportunity and a threat because we've seen where coalition governments have failed our people in some municipalities. So I think the opportunity there is that we can have public servants really stepping up. So, you know, young men and women that really are focused on the daily running of the municipality outside of the political noise. And that's
Yes.
where we need to get. So we shouldn't feel the transition, actually.
Mm,
You know, it
Mm.
should almost be like seamless. So I think there's an
mm,
opportunity for public servants to really build this meritocratic state that runs regardless of what's happening politically. People shouldn't feel the
mm,
disjuncture or the transition or any of the turmoil. And then I also think that, of course, from our perspective, we are really working on ramping up the infrastructure build program of the country. We are looking at implementing the next few catalytic projects in the country. We're looking forward to making sure projects like Umzimvubu that have been in the government's planning for 36 years actually go
mm,
into construction. That for us is one of the things that's very important. So how women ready themselves obviously is that you want to be uh, in the space that you know can make sure that you participate either as an entrepreneur or as a planner from government's end and so on. So I think we just need to know that this is government's priority. um, I think that government's priority on infrastructure will not change in the next 10 years. So I think all of us should be focusing our efforts there, whether it's from a financing perspective, whether it's from a
mm,
planning
mm,
perspective, from an implementing perspective as engineers, built environment professionals, and
mm,
so on. I think we
mm,
can focus on that.
mm,
Yeah, and I think overall, as women, we just need to be more serious about collaboration and
mm,
coordination to take advantage of all the opportunities that really are at our disposal right now and will continue to
mm,
be for the next 10
mm,
years. I always say that the mood of the country is young, it's black, and it's female. It's like it's a mood, it's in the air. Everyone wants a piece of young black women, right? Yes, but we must position ourselves to take over. And I think the best way is to collaborate, to coordinate,
mm,
and to make sure that, you know, we are in these networks that make sure that we can take advantage of these spaces. I think just as a parting shot, it would be very nice to get more women really occupying these political spaces, you know, these yeah, that are not the best, I suppose, as we see them right now. But you know, I'm sure we'd all love to deal more with a female counselor than a male. I don't know. Just saying. Just saying. It would be great to see more women in those spaces as well. Because the state cannot divorce itself from those things. We deal with politicians daily, and it would be nice to have some women in the space.
mm, mm.
Amazing.
Thank you. And Lisa, maybe just to add to that, is there anything that you're seeing? What is coming, and how do we position ourselves?
I'm going to just kind of dovetail off what Nombulelo has said. I think the
Mm,
key thing is must rise above the noise. There will always be noise. I
Mm.
think for me, what we need to be able to think about is that, you know, resilience is a destination. It's a state of being. We've
mm,
come
Yeah.
mm,
out of a pandemic that we never thought would even take place. So I think for me,
mm,
going forward, we need to be able to transform and adapt and know that this is the new normal. There will be
mm,
change. We can see that, you know, the journey and the quantum of our democracy is changing, and we need to be able to consider that. And then I think, you know, really what we need to be able to think about is obviously consider that we need to be able to work on better infrastructure. We need to provide services digitally. I think ultimately at the end of the day, where we're moving toward is it's the digital world. We must front of providing better technology. I mean, when I look at the SaaS technology, I think it's great, but how do we integrate that to be able to not have to talk to a call center agent or wait on the line for, a number of hours? So I think there's a lot that to be done. But also, when we look at female representation, let's put our girl child forward. Let's think about girl children and putting them at the forefront of coding, at the forefront of, working with technology. I when you have a little daughter that comes to you and says, "Hi, I'd actually like to code." Open to that and say at the end of the day we need to be able to enable our women, and women need to be able to be in a position where they can take up those leadership roles and really to be able to drive the change. So
Awesome.
optimistic and hoping that at the end of the day, Australia has sharks, South Africa is way better, and at the end of the day we have dry. So we want to be able to keep our people at home. Thanks.
Thank you so much. So let me come in there, and what is your journey looking like? So where are you headed? Are we seeing the next premiere in you? What are we seeing? Tell us how. What are we seeing?
Currently, I'm inspired by women because they are radical. They are radical. I see the Auditor General as a woman, and the, it's so fascinating. It's so interesting that what we thought women could not do, women are doing right now.
Yes.
I'm just happy on how women are radically positioning themselves in private sectors, in leadership, in entrepreneur. So I think in order for us to continue positioning ourselves and being an inspirations to others, we need to continue with. I can't say I want to be the Auditor General and I lazy around. I need to proceed with your continuous learning. I need to attend your conferences. I need to attend webinars. I need to make sure that I build strong professional professional profile, and I take part in things that will develop me to be or aspire me to be what I want to be. Yeah. So I want to see change in this district. I don't want to be in a position and when I leave, it looks as if I was never appointed to that position. No, I don't want to be associated with no change at all. No, I want to bring change. I want to bring fresh ideas to municipalities, and obviously with I'm gonna need the political buy-in. I'm gonna need administrative buy-in. But I believe I will eventually get there. But I want to live. If ever I'm gonna live, yes, I'm gonna live, of course. But I want to leave a mark. I just don't want to live without making a difference. I want to change audit opinions. I want to strengthen controls, and I want my name to be associated with that. When I joined Jomoro, there's one municipality in the Northern Cape that I worked at, and the moment I joined the municipality, I joined them as a consultant, and I later joined them as an employee. And that year, the municipality managed to progress, moving from a disclaimer to a qualified opinion. So I left the municipality the next day to join Salga. And even now, they still feel if I had maybe stayed a little bit longer, I would have maybe assisted the municipality to move to. So it's leaving a mark and making a difference that really counts. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Don't be shy, Auditor General. Just put it out there. We heard you. Awesome. Nombulelo, are you the president, next president of the country? Tell us, how does your own personal journey look like?
Personal journey is I probably will move out of the public sector a little bit, but I'll be back. Yes, I probably will do that. Yeah, and really just, contest these spaces that are difficult for women to get into. I think that's definitely something that I will want to do as well. But yeah, I think from a personal career perspective, yeah, you can feel in government when you almost at a youngish age reach a particular level that you might hit a ceiling too soon. So maybe you just have to move out a little bit and experience more outside, and then you can come back and give back. There are things that are unavoidable. I've struggled with, like finding myself in working in political offices. It is really like not easy, but I always find myself back in that space. So who knows what will happen with the next administration?
Awesome, awesome. It's quite interesting, and I like that the fact that we need to actually be open and flexible to change, to transition, so that we become the better self, we become the best that we can be. So I'm happy that you're actually considering moving out and coming back, depending on your scenario, of course. Anessa, how is it looking for you? Tell me, what does the next 5 years look like from the Safi?
Thanks, Tsholofelo. I think for me, one of the greatest lessons I've learned is career growth is not linear. When we think about career growth, you almost just want to think of the straight line up, and that's where you're going. One of my, personal experiences is moving across industries and really better understanding how each of those work and what are some of the best parts of those industries that I could take on. So I think for me, it really is a continuous journey. Obviously, aiming for the top, but becoming a better version of myself as I go through that journey. Being a continuous learner and learning new things, learning new and innovative ways, and just really better understanding the business that I am in. I am a career auditor, lifetime auditor. I think at some point maybe auditors do get burnout. So we have to think about whether moving closer to business or maybe moving into public sector. But at this point, just being the best at what I do. And I believe that the opportunities will come through to you as you build your brand.
Wow. Thank you everyone for just giving us an insight into your own personal journeys and when you're leading. We do have a question in the comments. I think it's sort of two prompt. The first question is, how do we encourage young people who are coming out and graduating? How do we encourage them to join or come into the public sector? Especially with all these negative narratives, but how do we sort of turn things around and encourage young people to join the public sector and serve us? The second question is that we're talking about women taking over. So then, how do we then encourage, especially the girl child, to just go for it, to just take over and go for it. Anessa, let's start with you, and then Tolu, and then Nombulelo on those two questions.
Thank you. So let's pick up the first one. I pick up a bit of a tone to be able to say, moving into public sector, being in the internal audit profession can bring a little bit of a dimming in terms of your professional judgment as you move into private. I think for me, the key thing is ultimately at the end of the day, it's really to what Sulu had highlighted, from an administrative perspective, being very assertive. So even as an internal audit function within the municipality, as a young internal auditor going in, you've got to always maintain your professional judgment and have a level of skepticism as you monitor, as you report. Bring those things through. Sometimes it may not always be easy to stand strong to your word, but if you bring through the data points and bring through the factual accuracy of what you're saying, I don't think anybody can question your judgment then. I think the key thing is separate opinion from or emotion from the outputs of your data, and really at the end of the day, your independence should then talk for itself. I think those shifts are important then as you come through into private sector. I think at the end of the day, my personal journey is moving into consulting so that you're still able to have a level of independence, and that then allows you to be able to move into private as well. I think it's how you build your brand. I think in terms of the second question, to be able to, I know that at the end of the day, there's quite a patriarchy view in terms of government leadership and where we are. I believe that there's a lot of work we need to be doing in terms of graduate programs, in terms of internships and learnerships. I mean, my personal experience, which is a way long time ago, but when the MFMA came through, there was a graduate and an internship program run through where government had presented that funds to be able to build a pipeline. I think for me, we've got to be able to focus on that and really bring those young leaders into the public sector to be able to then breach the gap of the old with the new. And ultimately, there will be a new reign. And we've got to be able to work on what we said earlier, on merit. At the end of the day, merit is important, and make sure that we've got that pipeline of the best young ladies that we know we're grooming for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Anessa. Thank you, Anessa. Nombulelo, I know you have to jump out in 5 minutes. So maybe if we can just catch you, and if you can give word of advice as well, encouraging words as well as to how do we get the woman power into leadership.
Yeah, I think Anessa kind of sums it up perfectly. You just have to occupy the space and ready yourself to occupy that space. Being assertive in that space, in whichever space you occupy, is very important. And sometimes, as women, we are able to build organizations and build leadership, which is not us. So we don't build our own brands. We don't tie ourselves to this very big and beautiful work that we're doing. So it's very important. Men are not ashamed. Even if they send one email, they will say, I sent an email and then this happened. They're not ashamed to really tie themselves to their own successes. And I think we need to be very bold about it and very selfish about saying, firstly, call me by my correct title. This is what I do. This is how senior I am. And this is what I contribute. So really taking ownership of the work that we do is very important. Telling our stories, codifying, this brilliant work we've done in all our municipalities, the turnaround Tulu has done in the Northern Cape. Who even knows that it was a young woman who moved an audit finding from disclaimer to qualified and so on. So I think it's very important that we tell those stories, but otherwise just occupy the space regardless.
Thank you, Nombulelo, and thank you so much for joining us today. In case you jump off before we conclude, thank you. We can't thank you enough. Tulu, how can we sort of empower or our young women to just take over and take the reign, and how do we get more young people into public sector? What will be your messaging to encourage more young people in the public sector as well?
Thank you. I think we should appreciate that being where you are should be. I think we should appreciate that being in a public sector doesn't necessarily mean you gonna adapt the culture, because there's the stigma that in the public servants don't want to work, they are lazy, and so to me personally, it's about what you want. It's about what you want to achieve at the end of the day. That's why we still have we still have in the public sector people who can assist processes, and they are still in the public sector, who are not ashamed to implement what needs to be implemented, who are assertive about it. And I think in terms of our graduates who aspire to join the public sector, they shouldn't be afraid to do so. Like I alluded, it's all about what you want. If you know what you want, you will do things right when you join the space. And I'm seeing it in most municipalities these days. They are moving to, when they advertise the posts, they are moving to, you should be affiliated. It's a requirement, no longer an added advantage. You should be affiliated with a professional body.
Yeah.
You understand? So that it gives people confidence, because they know no one would want to be to be stripped of their titles, or their qualifications, when they are when they belong, or they are affiliated with a professional body. So I think if we move towards direction, we strengthen our requirements, I think it's gonna assist. And right now, I think even political parties, different political parties, they are very clear that the political leadership must have qualification. That means our employers will have qualifications. The trend that we have now as councillors, as our employers, they have qualifications. That means we are no longer led by people who are not educated. You understand? So I think that's a very good initiative that political parties have implemented. In terms of taking over, I think assertiveness is key. Women, you need to be assertive. You need to be assertive. Don't shy away from what you know you can do best. Don't shy away from that. Just be assertive, and I believe that's key.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you. Rise above the noise, be assertive, and get your professional affiliation. Anessa, you talk about brand building, being authentic and true to self, and being purposeful as to the brand that you actually want to build, and what you want to be known of. As we close, ladies, let's talk to legacy. What is it that when you leave, when you leave anywhere, any place, or eventually when you do leave this earth, what is it that you want to leave behind? What what do you want to be known of as Anessa, who did what or who was what?
Thank you. I think for me, I want to be able to leave either whether I'm leaving a job, whether I'm leaving a role, whether I'm leaving this world, to be able to know that I've made a difference. I think to have to leave the place that you started a little more different than when you've ended. I think for me that took being authentic, having empathetic leadership, and at the end of the day, it's about teaching. I come from a family of teachers. My mom was a teacher, so teaching is in my genes, and maybe Tumelo can attest to that. That at the end of the day, as worked, we've taught. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing. I live by the quote by Dr. Maya Angelou that says, as you receive, give, as you learn, teach. And I think for me, it's the legacy I want to be able to leave behind. I have a colleague that actually refers to me as Anessa Unisa, and that's interesting because I'm always the one he comes to when he needs some sort of guidance or something. So that's the legacy I would leave behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anessa Unisa. That is so wonderful, actually. In a room of 100 people, Anessa wants to be the teacher. So, Anessa Unisa. So I don't know if this question is repetitive for you, because you did talk a lot earlier on about impact, making a change, leaving things better than we found them. Is that your legacy? Is that what you want to leave behind?
Tori, yes, definitely. I have touched a lot on what I want to leave behind. That's definitely my legacy, but also my leadership qualities. When you leave an organization, whether it's in a private space or your public sector, what legacy do you want to leave? And for myself, I want to I want to leave a space with a positive impact, of course, through my body of work. And what I do right now is that when in my unit there are people, and I was supposed to have be training a new employees at 2:30, but we postponed it to tomorrow because I was not certain how long we're gonna take here. But what I'm doing is I'm imparting in them what I have. I'm transferring the skill. That's what I want to be remembered. I'm training them internally, and as time goes, if I see that here and there they need external training, I will take them. But for now, what I have in myself, I'm actually trying to impart in them.
Wow, that's and it's amazing how everything is always so in sync and so aligned that I guess today are aligned in just the impact. And of course, it makes sense for somebody within public service, who wanting to leave things better than they found them, but also to be teachers, you know, and that's that's an amazing leadership skill, and we hear every day about the leadership vacuum within public sectors when we have such incredible women leading in public sectors. Ladies, we can't really thank you enough for coming today and sharing such wonderful insights. It's truly been magical, and we really hope that actually, this is part of your impact story as well, the giving of yourself, giving of your time to come to join us today in inspiring the next generation of leaders. Thank you so much. We appreciate you and hope that we get to collaborate and work together in future. Thank you, Anessa, and thank you so much, Tolu. To everybody who was able to join us today, we are so grateful that we were able to join us, and we hope you took from this session as much as we have. We definitely learned a lot. Meritocracy, rise above the noise, leave things better than we found them. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Please join us in the next session next week on the 22nd of August. Thank you so much. Bye bye. Until next time. Lekamosho.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sawadika. Kumkumka.
Sawadika.